There is a moment, somewhere in the Arctic night, when a man realizes he has maybe 4 minutes left to live. Not 4 hours, not 4 days, 4 minutes. That is how long the human body can function at -50 degrees Celsius, before the cold stops being a sensation and starts being a verdict. His fingers are already gone. Not painful, just absent, like they belong to someone else. His thoughts are slowing, thickening, the way water moves just before it freezes. And the storm around him is not wind in any sense that word normally means. It is a physical force, a 100-kilometer-per-hour wall of frozen air that doesn't push, it erases. In that moment, with the clock running and the darkness absolute, he does the one thing that no survival manual, no military training, no engineering degree on Earth would ever tell him to do. He kneels down into the snow, and he starts to build. This is the Arctic, a place so hostile to human life that the laws of physics and biology seem to have agreed, in advance, that no one should be here. There are no trees, no wood for fire, no stone to shape into walls, no metal, no clay, no fiber. None of the raw materials that every other civilization in human history used to keep itself alive. What exists here is cold, darkness, wind, and snow. That is the entire inventory. And for thousands of years, the Inuit looked at that inventory and saw not a death sentence, but a construction site. They raised families here. They built communities here. They passed down a system of knowledge so precise, so layered, and so quietly brilliant that modern engineers studying it today still find things they cannot fully explain. The only thing that ever stood between the Inuit and extinction was the snow beneath their feet, and what they built from it will make you question everything you thought you knew about human intelligence. Before a single block is cut, before a single wall rises from the frozen ground, the Inuit builder faces a challenge that most people never consider. Not all snow is the same. To the untrained eye, the Arctic is just white, an endless, uniform blanket of frozen nothing. But to the Inuit, that white landscape is a library, and every drift, every dune, every wind-carved ridge tells a completely different story. The wrong snow doesn't just make a weak house, it makes a death trap. What they are searching for is called pukingajuk, wind-packed snow. This is not the soft, powdery snow that falls from the sky. This is snow that has been worked on by Arctic gales for weeks, sometimes months, hammered and compressed until the individual ice crystals interlock at a molecular level, forming a material so dense it can support the full weight of a grown man standing on it. The Inuit called it white gold, and that name was not poetic, it was precise. To locate it, the builder uses a tool called the sabegut, a long probe carved from reindeer antler, and what happens next is one of the most quietly extraordinary things in the entire history of human engineering. The builder doesn't look at the snow, he listens to it. As the sabegut is pushed into the drift, a specific sound is produced, a tight, dry screech-scratch that tells an experienced builder, without any laboratory, without any instrument, that the crystal bond is exactly strong enough to hold a load without fracturing. Too soft, and the probe sinks in silence. Too hard, and the snow has crossed into solid ice. A material that conducts heat 80 times faster than air, which means a house built from it would pull the warmth from a human body faster than the Arctic wind itself. Once the right snow is found, the builder reaches for the only other tool he needs, the pana, a long-bladed knife originally carved from whalebone or reindeer antler. This single object functions as a saw, a chisel, and a precision measuring device all at once. And the unit of measurement? The builder's own forearm. Every block is sized against the length of the human arm, creating a system of perfect consistency, without a single number, a single scale, or a single written instruction. The human body was the first measuring instrument ever invented, and in the Arctic, it was the most reliable one available. But finding the right snow, and having the right tool to cut it, that was only the first problem the Inuit had to solve. The construction of an igloo begins not with the first block placed on the ground, but with the first block removed from it. This is the first stroke of genius in a process filled with them. Using the pana, the builder carves a large X into the snow inside the circle where the house will stand, then cuts 2 parallel lines roughly 30 centimeters deep, and with a series of sharp, angled jabs at the base, the block pops free, pulled out not by brute force, but by gravity and the snow's own natural cleavage planes doing the work. A standard block runs 60 to 90 centimeters long and can weigh up to 40 kilograms. And by extracting every single block from inside the foundation circle itself, the builder is solving two problems with one action. The floor drops, creating extra headroom without adding extra layers of wall. And that lowered floor becomes a cold sump, a natural pit where the heavy, freezing air settles and stays, pooling downward and away from the living space above. In a world where every calorie burned is a calorie that has to be replaced, this kind of circular efficiency isn't clever. It's survival mathematics. Now the walls begin to rise, and this is where the Inuit depart entirely from what any instinct would suggest. Rather than stacking blocks in horizontal rings, the way a conventional builder would, they cut the first row at a 15-degree rising angle, transforming a flat ring into a continuous spiral ramp. Every block that follows sits against two contact points simultaneously, the surface below it and the face of the block beside it. This double anchor means the structure is self-supporting from the very first course. It doesn't need scaffolding. It doesn't need external support. It holds itself up as it grows, leaning inward with each row, gaining strength as it rises, rather than losing it. As each block is set into position, the builder delivers what can only be described as the knowing thump, a sharp, deliberate strike with the palm of the hand. That impact generates a burst of friction heat, melting a microscopic layer of crystals at the contact surface. Those crystals refreeze in less than a second, fusing the blocks together into a single continuous mass. What began as a pile of individual snow bricks becomes, through this process, one seamless shell of ice, unified, load-bearing, and extraordinarily strong. Then comes the moment that separates the igloo from every other structure ever built by human hands. The builder has been working from the inside, placing each block while standing within the narrowing dome, the opening above him shrinking with every row. And when the final gap remains, a hole just large enough for a single block, he reaches through it and lifts the king block into place. This block is wedge-shaped, wider at the top than the bottom, and it is lowered in horizontally, rotated, and settled into the opening like a mechanical plug being driven home. In that instant, the entire weight of the dome, every block, every kilogram of packed snow overhead, converts from a collapsing threat into a downward compressive force. The king block doesn't hold the dome up. It locks the dome in place, and the dome holds itself. Gravity, the very force that should destroy it, becomes the force that makes it indestructible. The final layer applied to the exterior is called the shack sack. Fine powdered snow shoveled over the entire surface by women and children, filling every microscopic gap between the blocks. Over time, the heat difference between the warm interior and the freezing air outside causes those particles to fuse together into a solid, continuous shell. And here is the detail that changes everything. Every storm that hits this structure doesn't weaken it. It packs that outer armor tighter. The wind that could tear apart a wooden house is, for the igloo, a maintenance crew. The storm was not the enemy. It was the builder. But a dome this strong, this perfectly sealed, it still means nothing if the cold finds another way in. And the cold always finds another way in. The cold doesn't knock, it seeps. It finds the entrance, the gap, the threshold, the one place every shelter in human history has always been most vulnerable. The Inuits solved this with an entrance tunnel stretching 3 meters long, dug lower than the main floor, and angled through at least one 90-degree turn before it reaches the living space. This is not architectural preference. It is fluid dynamics, applied without a single equation. Cold air is denser than warm air, which means it sinks and stays low. It flows into the tunnel, drops into the pit at the base, and pools there, trapped, unable to rise into the living space above. The freezing exterior air never actually enters the home. It is caught, held, and neutralized before it ever reaches the people inside. Once past the entrance, the interior of the igloo is divided into 3 distinct tiers, each one engineered to exploit a specific law of thermodynamics. The lowest level handles waste and wet gear. The middle tier serves as the kitchen and workspace. And the highest tier, the igloo, the sleeping platform, is raised a full 50 centimeters above the floor and occupies 2/3 of the entire interior. By positioning the sleeping area at the highest point, The Inuit placed themselves inside what physicists call the thermal bubble, the band of warmest air that naturally collects near the ceiling. In the middle of an Arctic night, with a blizzard tearing the world apart outside, the temperature on that sleeping platform holds between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius. The difference between inside and outside can reach 40 degrees or more, sustained by nothing but physics, geometry, and a single lamp. That lamp is the kulik, a shallow bowl carved from soapstone, filled with seal blubber, and fitted with a wick of dried Arctic cotton grass or moss, trimmed with surgical precision using a small tool called the takuti. The flame it produces is blue and entirely smokeless. It is not a campfire. It is a calibrated heating element, designed to warm the space without producing the carbon that would suffocate the inhabitants, or the excess heat that would melt the structural walls. Over time, that carefully managed warmth triggers something remarkable on the interior surface of the snow blocks. The inner face melts, just slightly, just enough, and then refreezes into a thin, smooth film of clear ice. This is the ice glazing effect, and it transforms the igloo from a snow shelter into something far more sophisticated. That ice film seals every microscopic pore in the wall, eliminating air leaks entirely. And because ice is reflective, it begins to act as an infrared mirror, bouncing the metabolic heat radiating from the inhabitants' bodies back into the center of the room. The walls are no longer just walls. They are thermal batteries, storing and returning energy to the people living inside them. To prevent the warm, moist breath of the family from condensing and dripping onto the sleeping area, many families installed a lining of seal or caribou hide suspended just inside the snow wall. This created a pocket of still, dead air between the skin and the ice, a double thermal break that stopped the structure from absorbing moisture and weakening from the inside. And set directly into the wall, a block of clear freshwater lake ice served as a window, transparent, airtight, flooding the interior with clean Arctic light while maintaining the sealed thermal envelope completely intact. But the igloo was only one part of the system. The human body itself had to be engineered for this environment, starting with what went into it. In a world without sunlight for half the year and no access to plants, vegetables, or fruit, the Inuit developed one of the most sophisticated nutritional systems ever devised. They buried walrus and seal meat underground during summer, triggering a controlled anaerobic fermentation process called Igloo that pre-digested the protein, making it far easier for a body under extreme cold stress to absorb. And then there was kiviak, up to 500 small auk birds packed into a sealed sealskin bag, layered with fat to block oxygen, and buried under rocks for 18 months. The enzymes within the birds' own bodies slowly broke down bone and tissue into a dense, cream-like substance packed with vitamin D, B-complex vitamins, and probiotics that were impossible to find anywhere else in the Arctic landscape. This was not just food, it was pharmacy. On the body itself, the caribou parka performed feats that modern synthetic materials still cannot fully replicate. Each hollow strand of caribou hair trapping a microscopic pocket of air, and the sinew thread used to sew it expanding the instant it absorbed moisture, automatically sealing every needle hole in the garment. The clothing thought for you. And beneath it all, the Kamutik sled moved the entire world across the ice. Its crossbeams lashed to runners with seal hide ropes rather than nails, allowing the frame to flex and twist over uneven terrain, distributing kinetic energy across the entire structure, rather than letting it fracture at any single point. But survival was never just about the body, and what the Inuit built, beyond the physical, that may be the most extraordinary engineering of all. Inside a sealed dome of snow, in the middle of 6 months of polar darkness, the greatest threat was never the cold. It was the slow collapse of the human mind. The Inuit understood this, with the same clarity they understood physics and fluid dynamics, and they engineered against it, with the same precision. Every morning, without exception, the women of the household performed what can only be called a snow floor reset, scraping away the top layer of soiled snow, packed with lamp soot and food residue, and replacing it with fresh, clean white. This was not merely housekeeping. Pure white snow reflects lamplight with maximum efficiency, keeping the interior bright, alive, and psychologically bearable during months when the sun never rises. Outside the entrance, the sled dogs consumed every piece of organic waste around the settlement, eliminating bacterial buildup in the cold. while converting scraps into the energy they needed to survive the hungry months ahead. Nothing was discarded. Nothing was wasted. The igloo was a closed-loop system, perfectly calibrated, where every output fed back into the survival of the whole. And when the isolation became too heavy for individual families to carry alone, the community built the kajik, a communal igloo stretching over 6 meters in diameter, requiring the combined strength of several men to lift the massive blocks into place. Inside, they sang. Throat singing filled the dome. Drums beat against the frozen air, and the Kuvia Sukvik festival held the darkness at bay, not with fire or engineering, but with the oldest human technology of all, the sound of people choosing, together, to endure. These were not celebrations of comfort. They were acts of collective will, psychological anchors driven deep into the ice to keep a community from drifting into despair during the longest nights the earth produces. Remember that man standing alone in the blizzard at the beginning. No shelter, no fire, no tools, nothing but the frozen ground beneath his feet, and the storm closing in around him. He didn't just survive. He built a civilization. From a material that every other culture on Earth would have looked at and seen only cold, only danger, only death. The Inuit looked at snow and saw architecture, insulation, logistics, medicine, and light. In a world that gave them nothing, they engineered everything. And the most remarkable thing they ever built was not the igloo. It was the knowledge to build it, carried not in books, not in blueprints, but in hands, in ears, in the sound of a probe moving through snow, and in the memory of every person who ever survived a winter to teach the next generation how.